just before 1776, before Weishaupt from Ingolstadt University comes into the picture. Let's go to Frankfurt. There was a family by the name of Bauers, Rothschild. They changed their name. By 1773, this man was so rich, he invited 12 of one of the most influential, richest men in Europe. He invited them to his goldsmith shop, and he presented them, with a proposition. Remember now, 12, right? The 12 men. Obviously, they were bankers, most of them. 1773. The plan that he has devised and he introduced to these people was so diabolical. And then he proceeded to introduce his plan for world domination. And the 12 people that was present there were so taken aback. They were so convinced, right on sight, that I agreed with him, that yes, we are all unanimously agree to pool our resources, and through our money, resources, our wealth, we shall become the masters of the world. And so, 3 years later, by this time they were looking for a brilliant man, and they found a man of that caliber of intellect by the name of Adam Weishaupt, and he devised the plan. Weishaupt has developed the system, and when the system was all worked out, and he introduced the system to his masters that were bankrolling this entire project, they approved of it. Weishaupt declared the destruction of Christianity, the evaporation, the obliteration of monarchies in Europe. And he says, in order to see if our system would function or work, we have to put it to a test. And they did, didn't they? The Illuminati, he had to establish an order, a secret society. Whatever you do, you have plans against your fellow man, you have to do it in secret. So he brought about, formulated the Illuminati. Somehow we have to hide our intentions. We also have to hide the organization itself. He finally arrived at the conclusion that they should penetrate, infiltrate, and take over the already existing Masonic lodges, Orient lodges in Europe, in particular in France and Germany, of course, throughout Europe. When the time came to test mechanics, the system that he plotted for his masters, they brought about the French Revolution. Condition in France, condition that reflected state of affairs, economic affairs in France. They had to bring about an artificially created shortage of food. Thesis, antithesis, the clash of the two, because they always attract one another. They will clash, and then the clash results, in the synthesis. It's the Hegelian principle. It's the dialectics. French Revolution. So as you can see, they have created a miserable condition, economic condition in France. And then they pointed the fingers towards the bourgeois and the aristocrats, that all this misery, all this suffering, all this starvation, starving children, so can be attributed to the heartlessness of the bourgeois, the selfishness of the aristocratic class. They paid some of these gangsters that they came over from Germany. These were the agent provocateurs, and so they unleashed the revolution, and the rest is history. Some of the French idealists, intellectual leaders like Mirabeau, Robespierre, these guys, when they realized what happened, Mirabeau wanted to save Louis, and when they realized, that this guy, suddenly has changed his mind, checked him out. They have eliminated him. And then when Robespierre, Mirabeau was one of the brilliant orators, statesmen in France, and they used him. They actually compromised him. And then a banker comes in, Moses Mendelssohn. He's the one who set Mirabeau up. He set him up in such a way. Mirabeau was a good-looking man also, and a womanizer. So they introduced him to a marvelously beautiful woman social life in Paris. And she was also married, and so Mirabeau loved that. The point I'm trying to make here is that see how cleverly they set him up. They blackmailed him. They made this man to lose his wealth and everything else. By the time Mirabeau realized what happens, too late. Robespierre. Then when he saw a bloodbath, I'm telling you, they turned the Cathedral of Notre Dame into a whorehouse. They have sacrificed worshipping of the goddess, the body. Here now we're talking about secular humanism. And so actually they turned the cathedral, Notre Dame Cathedral, into a house of ill repute, having sex orgies and rituals and everything else. And so when Robespierre realized, what happened, it was too late. He, in the assembly, at the assembly, Paris Assembly, began to pick some words. His guilt was catching up with him. He realized what he'd done to his nation, to his people, alluding the forces that really caused this bloodbath in France. The same day, they shot him in the face, in the jaw. They took him to the guillotine, And Samson, the famous operator, Samson ripped the bandage off his jaws when Robespierre was screaming like an animal for mercy until the blade took him out of his miseries. The Marat, another beast, an animal of a man. He suggests cannibalism. People were being taken and cooked in butter in huge pots. They were slaughtering children. These people were worse than beasts. And Marat was leading them. This man who actually was suffering, he was in the final stages of syphilis. And so you see the bitterness he held in his heart for his fellow man, and he tried to do as much damage, physical and spiritual damage, to his fellow man before he would die miserably. And he was actually stabbed to death in a bathtub by a young French girl. Communism, dialectical materialism, secular humanism, all in one, was already tested right there. France happened to be the testing ground for the system, how it would work. To the morbid, perverted pleasure of these money masters, all the damage that they have done in France exceeded their greatest expectations. There was a lot of Masons within the ranks of our founding fathers. This is a fact. You know, before George Washington did point it out. And in 1798, George Washington came to the conclusion that yes, there is a conspiracy bent on destroying the young republic, America. We're talking about 1798, just before he died, where he made an extensive speech about the Masons, the Jacobins, the democratic clubs. He knew what was going on. The French Revolution has brought about the demise of the French Empire, the monarchy, and of course the church itself. Napoleon came in, stepped in, took over. They armed him. They financed rearming the French army. I'm talking about Bonaparte. See, he got hip to the nature and the intentions of the people behind that was lending him money. He knew what was going on. They allowed him to go and do damage to various countries and nations in Europe. But when he finally decided to attack England, by this time England was the spawning ground, the headquarters, the base of operations of these folks, the money masters. And then that's when they said, So they armed Wellington to the max. Napoleon had to be stopped, and they stopped him. Napoleon was already in his final year, yet he was slowly being poisoned. We're talking about England and how the England became the headquarters or the base of operations of the money masters. Amschel Bayer had 5 sons. He sent Nathan to London, James to Paris, Karl to Italy. Solomon went to Vienna. Meyer has stayed in Frankfurt. Frankfurt is still the headquarters of these folks. Look at this new euro, this new European currency. The orders, they control the euro from Frankfurt. Why? It's because these folks, they still control the monetary systems of the world. Fibro set up dynasties. By the 1800s, 1815, 1820, they controlled Europe. They controlled the nations because they controlled their finances. Look at the Congress of Vienna. I care not who controls the politics of a nation as long as I control that nation's money, currency. To follow up on that, well, his grandson made similar comment in England. One of the Rothschild, the sons of Nathan in London. This is what he says. I care not what puppet they set on the throne of England. The man that controls the empire upon which the sun never sets is the man who controls the empire's currency. And I am that man.